All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dylan Mangel with Nebraska Extension, and this week I just want to give a quick video update. As the season starts to wind down, things are looking dry, and people are getting ready for harvest. I want to give an update on what you might see out in some of those fields if you went out and looked at those beans right now. There's several issues that have been building throughout the season, like sudden death syndrome, which just started to show up at the end of the season. But several other things you might notice if you get down and look at those beans in the remaining couple weeks before harvest. So first of all, I just want to point out, if you go to cropwatch.unl.edu, you can see where UNL puts out information like this. And I'm just going to walk through an article I just put out. If you go to that main page and scroll down to late season soybean diseases, that's that article. Otherwise, you can go to crops, soybean, and then select diseases and find more information about diseases on here. So here's this article. I put this out with Justin McMecken, our soybean entomologist, on some of the issues you might come across right now. And unfortunately, a lot of these things look really similar. So we'll just go through these one by one real quick. The first, and one that's been widespread, is sudden death syndrome. Wet soils early in the season allowed this to infect. It's not obvious on the plants until they start to get a little bit of that late season dry down stress, potentially earlier. But that's when we saw it this year. And it's always going to start off as this foliar symptom, not nearly this extreme. It'll start off lighter and then build and progress to this, typically from the upper leaves down. If you pull those plants, you'll see root systems like this. Notice the taproot broke off. Not a great system. And then there's this blue growth on here. That's not always present. Sometimes it's more gray. But the further east you go in the state, the more often I see this blue growth show up. So that might be there. And if you see it, that's a really good sign you're looking at sudden death syndrome. If you split those stems open, you'll see the pith remains white in this plant, but the cortex here has some sort of brown staining and a little bit of streaking that goes in there. And if you split that stem up higher, it typically looks a lot healthier. That's a good comparison to make with this next disease issue, which is brown stem rot. Another fungus, another root rot pathogen, but it's just going to get into there and it's going to cause a brown stem rot instead of that healthy white pith. And you can see here, this is going to progress pretty far up the plant. If you see this early in the season, it might not be nearly as bad, but later it can be pretty severe. And notice as well that this is not an open channel through the pith of this plant. It's got pieces it's got stuff in there blocking it. That's important when you want to compare this with another problem, Dectes stem borer, because in the stem borer case, it would be an open channel, also brown, but potentially full of insect frass, and you can often find the stem borer in those. But here's the problem. Brown stem rot is going to cause really similar foliar symptoms. And I don't even try to tell sudden death from brown stem rot in the field. I just split them and look at the stems, and that's the real key giveaway. Next one I want to mention is red crown rot. This hasn't been found in Nebraska yet, but it likely could be close. And this is a close-up picture of the base of that stem. You can see these little spheres on here. That's fungal growth where they make spores. This is infecting through the roots as well. It unfortunately causes the same foliar symptom, so you can't go by that symptom for anything. But if you see this, it's likely red crown rot. Now, we're not looking for red staining at the base of the stem or on the stem. We're looking for true little red spheres that are down there, and those will be really obvious, I think, if we see them. And just to jump over, here's a map of where red crown rot has been found so far. So as far east as Delaware, but lately it's sort of been spreading in the Midwest. Indiana, Illinois, Ohio just found one. Wisconsin just found one as well. Missouri's been finding several. So as this, and it's down in the South more as well, but it's looking like it's in a broader area now that we look closer than anticipated. Iowa hasn't seen it yet. Minnesota and Nebraska have not seen it yet either, but I suspect it's a lot closer than we think, and I wouldn't be surprised if we found it here. So keep an eye out. If you think you see those symptoms, feel free to contact us at the UNL Plant and Pest Diagnostic Clinic, or you can contact me directly. The next set of diseases are really common things that show up later on. I'm not going to say for sure that they're causing major issues or that they're the cause of anything, but they're often on a lot of plants and they're easy to see if you're just seeing them late. So pod and stem blight is one. The real big giveaway here is that these have little dots on the outside of the stem about the size of a period in text. But they're arranged in a row. They're very linear when they're on the plant. That's a really good giveaway because other ones aren't so. Northern stem canker shows up. This one's got a great diagnostic feature, which is that it makes zone lines. So if you split that stem, you can see these lines that look sort of like topographic lines on a map showing elevation. That's only going to be on northern stem canker that you see those. Here's what that northern stem canker will look like earlier in the season. By this point, it's typically too late to see that. And then charcoal rot is another one. This is going to show up worse in drier areas, but this is going to also have little pinpoint black specks on there, but this will be more integrated into the tissue. So if you split that stem open, you'll see them more inside of there, and they're not going to be in a line. They're just going to be kind of randomly spaced around. So that's it for diseases. The other ones I'll just mention is Dectes stem borer. Here's an earlier infection. You can see a small borer in that one. It came in through that petiole and then moved up and down the stem, eating. Split stems and try to find those. That'll eventually consume the whole inside of that plant. Like in this picture, it goes top to bottom. The borer is almost always in there when I find these. So split it open and look for it. And then late season gall midge damage. A lot of plants got killed by gall midge, especially on field edges, and they're just standing there. So here's a cluster of them. If you push those lightly and they break off above the ground, an inch or so above the ground, likely gall midge. Try to pull them up, and if they break off above the ground, gall midge in many cases. So peel open that lesion where it breaks off and see if you can see any sign of insects in there. Often by this point they've moved on and you're not going to see them, but based on the location and distribution of those, it can be a good idea or a good place to start. Last thing I'll mention is triazole injury because same foliar symptom. We've seen this show up later too. The big difference here is the primary injury is going to be where the plant was at the top of the canopy when that triazole fungicide was applied. This is not like a big yield loss causing issue. It's just going to damage some leaves. They'll grow past it. Not a big deal, but be aware of it. It's not going to be sudden death syndrome if it's just showing up in the middle of the canopy and the top of the canopy looks good. Split those stems, see if they look healthy, but this just is an odd reaction that happens sometimes. So the last thing I'll just mention are some additional resources. If you go to the Crop Protection Network, same site I showed you that red crown rot map on, we've got fungicide efficacy tables. In this case, I've linked the one for seedling diseases. A lot of these the sudden death syndrome are showing up and impacting seedlings, infecting roots. So there's seed treatments that are effective against those. So this is going to show effective seed treatments. We've got the Nebraska EC 130 guide, and then a link here for the soybean gall midge alert network as well. Last thing I'll say is if you're interested, you can find us on X at Dylan Mangel and also on Facebook at Nebraska Soybean Pathology. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, just a quick update this week. So thanks for watching.